Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Web Dev. Let's take a look at what we discussed in the last lecture. So in our last lecture, we discussed CSS, right? We took a look at how we can create cascading style sheets, right? And then learn some of the basics of CSS, how to change the foreground color, the background color. Also, we discussed some ways of laying out content, right? We took a look at laying out things horizontally, right? That we used things such as float, right? And we saw that was kind of a hack. And then we took a look at flex, right? There was a dedicated set of CSS rules, right, that allowed us to lay out things horizontally and control how things either justify to the left or to the right, or took up the entire width of the screen, or how things might grow to expand into white spaces, right? We also introduced Bootstrap, right, as a CSS library that makes it easy to implement things such as responsive design, right, and to lay out things in different ways. As the user might change the size of the screen, right, and the content can then adapt to the different sizes, to different devices. Right, that defines several breakpoints, right? That based on the most common, the most popular screen sizes for large monitors or laptops, or a portable iPad, or even a phone, right? And so all these breakpoints are based on the most common screen sizes, and so what Bootstrap does is that it defines different media queries, right, that target these different screen sizes, and this allows us to create logic, not functional logic like with JavaScript, but based on the screen size, CSS can we can target different screen sizes and apply different style sheets for the different screen sizes, right, in the different devices. So what we're going to do in this lecture, we're going to apply what we've learned, what we've practiced in the exercises, right? Using CSS, using Bootstrap, and we're going to apply that to the Kambaz application that we've been working on throughout the semester, right? Right now it's just a plain HTML, and it doesn't look very interesting. And what we're looking for is being able to use these CSS skills, right, so that it looks more what the target wireframes, right? That it looks more like the real canvas. Yeah, so let's get started. Right, so let's take a look at how we can style the Kambaz application, with the CSS and with the Bootstrap library that we discussed in the prior lecture. First, let's tackle the Kambaz nav, right? This is the sidebar that is on the left-hand side, right? That has the background is black, right? And you have several icons in there, some texts, right? Kind of describing what that particular link takes you, right? And we've implemented some of these links already, right? The account allows you to sign in, sign up, and has access to the profile. Then the dashboard is supposed to give you, a set of cards, right, that allow you to navigate to different courses, right? That whether you're a student or faculty, these are courses that you're enrolled in or you're teaching. And we also worked on the courses, right? That shows the active course, the one that you've selected. Now, currently, the current implementation for our Kambaz navigation sidebar is pretty lame, right? You just have these hyperlinks, right, that are not styled. Right? And so what we want to do is that we want to make it look more what the actual sidebar look is, right? With icons, and it's highlighted, right? And the color scheme is somewhat inspired from the real sidebar. Okay. So one of the things that we did in our prior implementation of the sidebars is that we kind of misused tables, right? This is based on the fact that HTML was mostly designed for rendering things vertically, right? Where you have an infinite scrolling vertical page, right? That you can scroll forever, and just content just keeps growing vertically, right? There wasn't a lot of thought to be able to lay out things horizontally, right? Well, I mean, other than tables, but tables were mostly targeted to being able to display tabular data, right? So things where you might have records that might have similar fields of the same data type, and they weren't really meant for laying out content. And we kind of misused it in the last assignment. So let's fix that first. Right? We're going to take advantage of the display classes that Bootstrap provides, right? That it controls the display property that allows you to lay out things horizontally. If you remember in our prior exercise, right, we were changing the display value from block to flex, right? And this automatically converted the divs or the paragraphs or any block element to a flex element, right? And that laid out content instead of vertically, it changed it to so that it rendered horizontally, right? So we're going to remove all the tables from all our layouts. We stop misusing tables. All right. So here on the left we have the implementation of the layout for the main layout of the Kambaz application, right? Where we used a table, right, to render the canvas navigation on the left column, right, and then all the other pages, right, on the right hand side. And this is what it looks like, right, on our browser, right. So here's the canvas navigation on the left side, which is this one over here, which has just a whole bunch of hyperlinks, right, to the Northeastern, account, dashboard, courses, it's this implementation right there, right. So the current implementation uses table for laying this out, and we want to fix it, right? So it's a misuse of the table tag. So what we're going to do is that we're going to remove tables entirely and just go back to what it would normally look like, right? So let's remove tables. We do have to have at least some divs around this, just like that. Okay, and there we go. So notice that now it goes back to just being divs, right? This on the top is a block element that's expanding the whole width of the screen, and then below that is it's whatever page you navigate to, right? Whether it's the account screen, right, the dashboard, or the courses, right, to a particular course that you select. And so obviously this is not the layout that we want, right? We do want this to render horizontally, but we saw that it's a bad practice, right, to use tables. So how can we achieve the desired layout? Right. So let's use flex, right? That as we discussed in our prior lecture, right? So this could be our outer container, right? And then the inner divs would if we apply the flex property, then these inner divs will render horizontally, right? So let's do that. Let's wrap this in their required divs, right? They're still rendering side by one on top of the other, like normal divs. And so we can override the block element, the container here. There we go. Well, there we go. So notice that this goes back to being laid out horizontally, like we want it. Okay. Let's do the same thing for all the other ones, right? So for instance, we know that the courses also used tables, right, for laying out this horizontally, right? So let's do the same thing there, right? So let's look for the course layout. It's this one right here. We'll also use tables, right? So just start off by removing the tables and starting from a clean slate, right? So let's see. So let's remove these tables, right? And right here, let's save that. And then we have, right? So we have the course navigation at the top, right? And then we have the other pages down below, which is the modules or the home, right? So we can try the navigation, make sure that, if we're on home, we show the modules on the left, right? And the course tabs on the right. And so we can still navigate between the two, home and modules, but instead of rendering side by side, it's rendering like just regular block elements, right? We have the course navigation at the top, right? And then the bottom is all the other pages as the children, right? So we can apply the same strategy, right? We can wrap this in an outer div. This is going to be our container that we're going to convert into a flex element, right? And so let's wrap this into our other divs, right? And then this div over here. And then the container, we're going to change it to flex, right? And then once I save that, notice that again, right, it renders horizontally like before, but without the misuse of tables. And that's true from home and modules. Excellent. Now for home, we also have here, also we use tables to lay out the modules on the left, right, and the course standards on the right. So let's fix that too. Let's go to the home page, and yes, we are using table or misusing tables, right, to lay out things horizontally. So let's fix that. Okay, so let's remove the. Let's put this like this so we can see what we're doing. So let's remove the table, make the modules, the course status. There we go. Okay, there we go. So again, it renders like regular block elements where you have the modules at the top and you have the course status at the bottom. Right? And to fix this, right, same strategy. We're going to wrap this in their own dedicated divs, right? And then the course status as well. That and the top level, we're going to have deflex. And that automatically, there it is, right? It renders them horizontally, like the way we want it. Right. Okay, so yeah, so it's now laid out horizontally like we wanted it. But as you notice, there's a few things that are not quite working the way we want it. Notice that the main content over here, it's not taking up the whole width, the maximum amount of width that it could take. There's a lot of white space here on the right. And what we really want is the main content over here to take up that extra space, right? And the reason is that, right, the default behavior for the flex elements is that they are only as wide as their content, right? So this content is not forcing it to be any wider, right? But we want it to grow, right? Even if there is this white space, we want it to give it to the center here. If it's in the modules, right, we want these modules to expand, right? And if we're in the dashboard, right, we want this whole thing to expand, right, all the way out. Right, so to illustrate this problem, I'm going to change some background colors just so you can see what's going on. So let's go back to the layout in the canvas, right? And let's change some background colors so you see what's going on. So we can change the style here. I'm going to change the background color, maybe, I don't know, something like yellow. Okay, yeah, there it is. There's the left side yellow, right? And then on the right side, we'll change the style to be light blue. Okay, so notice that what's happening is each one is just as wide as the content tells it to be, right? But what we want to be able to do is just to have this expand as far, just into that empty space, right? So that when we start adding new, additional cards here, right, it has space to grow to the right hand side, and then when there's not any more space, then yeah, it'll wrap around. Okay. So how do we do that? So what we can do is the div that we want to expand, right? We can add the class either FlexGrow1, that will do it, right? We'll expand, and I think there's an alternative called FlexFill, which is it's just Grow1, right? FlexGrow1, but this one's a little more generic, right? It's not necessarily advertising how it's actually implemented down below, right? So it's a more generic name for the same thing, right? So yeah, so that worked. Well, let's remove the colors here. Right? I only added the colors just to make the point. Let's remove that. And so if I navigate to the inside of a course, right, we kind of have the same issue, with the modules and even with home. Notice that there's a lot of white space out here that is not being taken advantage of, right? So let's take a look at the modules first on its own, and let's add those background colors just to see what's going on. Right? So if we go into the layout for the courses, let's add same coloring style, We can have the background color, and we'll say maybe yellow here on the left, right? And then here on the right, same thing. We'll do style, light blue. And again, so as I make this wider, notice that the modules here, it's not taking advantage of that extra space, right? And that's kind of the behavior we want in Kambaz, right? The original Kambaz, the main content kind of grows into that empty space, right? And so we can use the same strategy. The particular div that we want to grow, we can add the class, flex fill. So we can say class name, flex fill, save that. There we go, right? Now the module does grow into that additional white space. Okay, yeah, so let's remove the colors here. Just to make a point here. There we go. Now the home also has the same issue, right? Right, because again, the home itself uses an inner table, or now an inner flex div, right, to accomplish this layout. And again, inside, it's not growing the main content. Now here in modules, the main content is growing, right? And that's the course on the left, and then the modules on the right. Whereas home, this whole thing, the outer one is growing, but then there's a nested flex that is not growing, right? So whereas here we had the left side is this sidebar and the right side is the modules. Here, the left side is the modules and the right side is the status, right? And whereas here in the modules, the left, we don't want it to grow, but the right, we want it to grow. In the home, the left is the modules, which is the one we want to grow, and the right, we don't want to grow, okay? So it's kind of backwards. So let's apply that in the home. Let's do the same thing. If we go to the home page, right, we have the flex here, and the one we want to grow is the modules, not the right hand side, but the left side, right? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to apply class name, flex fill, okay. And so now notice that it is the modules is growing, taking up the extra space, and the status is kind of sticking to the right hand side, right? We might want to add maybe an extra break here. There we go. Okay, so the status kind of stays tucked away on the right hand side, and the extra space is being given to the modules. Okay. All right. Yeah. So we removed all that extra misuses of tables, and now we have a much better implementation of the horizontal layout using Flex. All right. So now let's take a look at styling the Canvas navigation sidebar. So it looks more like the target wireframe, right? So that it's it has a black background, has icons, and the text is white, and we have highlighting of whatever section you're visiting, right? So let's take a look at that. So here's the code, and what we're going to do is that we're going to replace this implementation, so that first we're going to use a component, a Bootstrap component that is very useful for styling this, right? And it's always a good idea to kind of reset the implementation to a component that how it's styled, and and also it implements the layout that you want, and then you can tweak the styling so it looks more what you want, right? So I'm going to use the list component, right, where these divs are just kind of like UL, right, unordered lists, and then all these are line items, right, that we can convert into links, right, that have a very well defined based styling that we can then override, right, to make it look for what we want. Okay, so let's do that. Yeah, so let's convert this div and convert that into list group. Right, so this is list group over here. There we go. I'm going to save that. Okay, so already it's adding some some additional spacing, some styling in there. Maybe let's make this bigger so that we see what we're doing. There you go. And let's see, and all these are going to be list group items. So list group item. There we go, like that. And all these are also going to be list group items. So list group item, convert that. My AI is already working with me. That's awesome. List group item. There we go. Okay, let's save that. All right, so it's already adding the styling for the Bootstrap list, right? With where every list item has a border, right? The whole list group, it has rounded corners. These extra spaces in between the list item is because we had added these breaks. So let's remove them. We don't need them anymore because the Bootstrap implementation for the list groups already adds vertical spacing. There's no need for the extra breaks. Okay. All right. So then we have the default implementation of the Bootstrap list. Okay. And so now we can go and start overriding what the things that we don't like. Right. So for instance, we have these rounded corners. We have these borders. The background colors is not what we want. So let's start overriding these things. So let's start off with removing these rounded corners. Right. So we can start applying, that we don't want it. We can apply rounded 0. Right, we're going to override that the radius is 0, and there we go. See that? It's gone. And we might want to have the background colors, right, set up so that we have it's black, all the background colors, right, except for maybe the one that is selected, like account. Right. So for instance, let's see. Let's highlight account. All the other ones are going to have a class of black background. So we'll say BG black, like that, right? And maybe the text could be white, right? Or actually, no, I think it's supposed to be red. And so the Bootstrap defines a set of colors, not using the actual color, but for instance, using names such as danger, right? And I guess here in the Western world, danger, right, has the color of red, right? And there's a whole bunch of other colors like success is green, warning is yellow, things like that, right? So account, I'm not going to override the color of the background. I'm going to leave it as white, or I might actually do that explicitly. I might say that class name, the background is actually white, right? And the text is danger, like that. Very good. And this one is going to be, let's see, class name, background color black. Actually, all the others are going to be black, so black. And text danger, perfect. And I guess we can copy that for all these. There we go. For courses, for this one, it's also going to be black. And this was also is going to be black, red on black, and then labs as well. Okay. What else? We also want to center these, right? So they're not, by default, they are justified to the left, but we can override that. And so we can do all these. We can say that this is, I think it's text center. Yeah, center. And let's apply these to all these. Account, dashboard as well. This one too. Oops. There we go. Okay, so they're all coming to the center. Perfect. Okay. What else? The borders is wrong, right? The borders is we don't want any border, so we can turn that off and say the borders for these guys, it's just going to be no border, so border is 0. There we go. And just remove all the borders. No borders there. No borders there. There we go. No borders. So notice that they're disappearing all around. Border 0. Border 0. Okay. Right, and finally this last one. Okay. Okay. Then we do want some maximum width, right? And we want the icons. We can override the size of the outer line item or the outer list container, or we can create a style or a class, right, that we can then apply here. We can also add some icons. So for Northeastern, that would be an image, right, that we don't have. Let's say the Northeastern logo. For the account, we can start looking at for icons that would be appropriate. Let's look for that. Let's see. We can go to React Icon and look for instance, for the account, maybe like a user or let's see, user. Yeah, we can use something like this. And so let's see, we can import it. You can import it from React Icons. Do we not install React Icons? Let's see. So here in account, save that. Maybe not. Maybe we didn't install it. All right, so that's fine. Let's stop the server for a second and let's install, npm install React Icons. And then start the server again. Okay. All right, let's see if we can import this now. There we go. And we should be able to refresh this. Okay, there it is. See that? That's the icons right there. Probably will need a break in between just to separate the two. And maybe we can change the size. So we can apply a font size of 1. That's the biggest, I believe. And there it is. We have the icon, right, and the text below. So we can do the same thing for all the other ones. For the dashboard, maybe we can look for an icon that might be appropriate. Let's see, dashboard. Or I think the one they have is something like this. Yeah, let's copy that. I'll put that right above the dashboard here. Save that, and we'll import that and FS1 and put a breakpoint. There we go. Right. For courses, I think we'll use maybe something like a book. So we say book, and we'll use maybe this one right here, FA book. So let's copy that. So here in the course, FA book, we'll import that and add a break. There we go. Calendar, that's an easy one. So let's look for calendar, and let's grab this one. And we can apply that above the calendar. We'll import. There we go. And inbox. Okay, we can maybe use this one. And apply that right there. PR, imported FS1. And final labs, we'll use something like a beaker or something. Beaker. Maybe I misspelled it. Maybe it's beaker. There we go. So let's add this cute little beaker icon. And let's add that above, like that. Import it, break, let's save that. There we go, right? And these should still work, right? We should still be able to navigate to the labs. Oh, actually, no. Right, these are list group, but they're not behaving like links, right? So these are not working at all, right? So for that, we need to convert these to behave like links. So as links, let's add that to all these. As links, all these as links, 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 links. Now, eventually, in the next assignment, we'll convert this into a data structure, like an array that we can iterate over that, as opposed to having to edit each individual item. Let's see. So we can refresh. Can we okay, now it goes back to being links. There we go. So we can navigate to Kambaz. We can navigate to the dashboard. Okay, everything works. The other thing that we want is that this should be. Notice that if I go to a course, right, that has a lot of content, right, if I have if I go to modules, right, that has a lot of modules, and maybe this over here. There we go. So let's copy that several times. There we go. Notice if I scroll, this sidebar kind of like scrolls with the content, right? And we don't really want that. We want this to kind of like be fixed, so it doesn't move, right? So let's fix that. So in the Kambaz navigation here, we can give it a class of position fixed. Position fixed. If I save that, now it stays fixed. See that? But we have introduced a couple problems here. One of them is that kind of everything's like below it, right? And that makes sense because if it's fixed, it's not participating in the width or the position of all the other content. So everything's like behind it, to the dashboard. So we have to fix that. The other thing is that in the real Kambaz, this stretches all the way to the bottom, and this stretches all the way to the top. Right, so we can fix that by changing the position. Now that it's fixed, we can change the position bottom to be 0. Okay, now it's down at the bottom, and also top 0. So that kind of is going to stretch it out. Okay, it's going to stretch it out. That's almost what we want. And then making its background, BG, to be just black. Right, there we go. Right, so that's stretched all the way, and so that it hides everything behind it. Okay. But yeah, now we have to fix this. The fact that this is kind of like behind. Now we have to fix that it's behind, but the fixing actually depends on the screen size, right? Because the real Kambaz, right? When you navigate to a course, it's responsive, right? So, for instance, if I go here, notice that this sidebar here, it's not always there, right? It's most of the time is there, but then when it's only there until you go to a really tiny screen. See that? And then it disappears. So this here, right, that's not behind, needs to be pushed off to the right hand side only when the sidebar is there, right? But then when I go below a particular size, then these two are hidden, and there's and then I don't need to offset this anymore, right? So let's first take a look at being able to hide and show, right, the sidebar, and then control the offset, right? So let's take a look at that. All right, so here we have on the right, we have the sidebars for the Kambaz navigation, right? And then obviously if you're inside of a course, you also have the navigation for the course. Now all these are supposed to appear and disappear at different screen sizes. If we look at the real Kambaz, we'll notice that we do have that sidebar that appears and disappears depending on what screen size we have. So for instance, if you're in a particular course, you'll notice that as the screen becomes smaller and smaller, right, we see that this sidebar here on the right disappears, and then if it gets narrower and narrower, we'll see that these two also disappear. Okay, so we want something like that as well, right? We want this to appear, disappear at different breakpoints. So, for instance, if it's anything below that, right, really right about there, okay, we don't want it to show. Okay, so yeah, so let's take a look at how we would accomplish that. All right, so here we have the sidebar, and we want it to appear and disappear. So yeah, so let's work on that. Now, one way we could do that is to apply the display classes, right, that allow you to apply either whether the value of display is flex, right, or if it's block, or if it's none. Just tells the browser that it should not render that particular item in the screen, even though it might still be in the DOM, and we just don't want to display it. So display block, we already know, right? It's a default display for divs, right? Where they render as block elements, meaning they take the whole width of the screen, whereas flex, right, causes the children of a flex element with a display as flex. It allows you to control the layout of the child block elements, right? And then none or display none allows you to just not render it. So with these classes, we can target whether we hide or show different things at different screen sizes. So for instance, I can turn on the none, right, and just not and then cause the particular content, right, to not display, right? Like for instance, there it is, right? So if you remove none, or if you apply the default block, right, it just shows it, and if it's none, it hides it. Okay. Now, what we want to be able to do is none just doesn't show it at all ever, right, at any screen size. What we want to do is start off with not displaying it, but then bring it back at some breakpoint, right? Just like Kambaz does, right? That when we reach a particular screen size, we want to bring back this sidebar. Okay? So let's try to do the same thing, right? So in Kambaz, have right now the Kambaz navigation sidebar is not shown at all, but we can say, well, bring it back when I want to apply block, right, at a particular screen size. So for instance, maybe this applies it from the smallest screen size, which is extra small. So maybe we can bring it back at screen size SSM, like small, right? Let's try that. You can target different breakpoints. Right? All right, so let's see if we can resize this. Actually, make sure that we are at the correct zoom level. Right, so let's see if we can move this. Oh, there it is. Right, so notice how it hides and shows at that particular breakpoint. And the screen might be a little bit too small. I don't think that at this point, yeah, the Kambaz is not showing it yet, right? So let's try making it a little bit bigger, right? That it should apply the block display, meaning bring it back so it's visible at slightly bigger screen size. So MD, so the next screen size. Okay, there it is, gone. And so if we keep going, now it'll bring it back out like right there. There it is. That's the screen size where we reach the breakpoint and it brings it back. Let's see if it's almost the same as this. Let's see if there we go. Yeah, it's behaving the same way, right? When it reaches, I think this is what, like 1,000 pixels maybe, or around 900 and something, right? So yeah, now it's behaving just almost the same way that the real Kambaz is working. Perfect. Now, what about the fact that we're hiding and showing, and so because this Kambaz navigation is using fixed position, this over here is kind of displaying below the sidebars, you know? So we want to be able to push this off, you know, this amount, whatever this width is, right? And actually, we can control that width. We can say that style, maybe the width, maybe I don't know, 120 pixels, something like that. All right, so it's a little narrower, right? So it's narrower. And then we can decide to to cause the width of push this off that amount, based on whether it's showing or not at that particular screen size. So one way we could do that is using a media query, right? Media query that targets a specific screen size, right? And that targets that specific element. Like for instance, we can start off with having maybe an ID here, right? That maybe call it Kambaz, WD Kambaz, something like that, right? And then have here a class for this particular div, so that we can target it, right? And then cause it to expand, right? Its padding, so that we have enough space in between, right? So that we can still show it, right? Offset a little bit, a couple pixels, so that it doesn't fall underneath. So we do have an example of that here, where we have right. This approach is applying it, the width and the showing and hiding right on the navigation. So we could do that, right? So for instance, this logic here, we could apply directly on the canvas navigation instead of the outer div. So for instance, we can apply it right here. So this is this D block over here. We can apply it to here. There we go. And then the width, I think we decided 120 pixels. So let's say width 120 pixels for style. There we go. Yeah, so I applied right to the. There we go. See that? Okay. So the remaining thing that we need to do is maybe push off some padding around here, so that it does it's not flush to this sidebar. So for instance, what we could do is just give it here a padding or margin. We can say some padding at the start, right? Or on the left side of maybe, I don't know, size 3. Oops. Let's see. Right? And then give it an offset, right? That will push it off a few, however wide this navigation wants to be, about 120 pixels, maybe a little more than 120 pixels. But we do need to target this with a particular class, right? And we have a solution here as an example where we can target the ID WD Canvas and then provide an offset, right, of 140 pixels only if the screen is above 768 pixels, right? If it's below that, then this would not apply. Right, so we can provide this class, maybe maybe WD main content offset. So maybe call this WD main content offset, right? And then create a class, a style sheet that is only applicable to Canvas style.css, styles.css. And then within the layout, we can import that so that we can apply that style to the overall Canvas application. So we can import styles.css, which right now doesn't have anything. So we'll create that media query of minimum width of 768. So media query, media, min. Yep. that min width 768, yeah, perfect. And we're going to target the WD Kambaz, I believe was, right? Kambaz. Followed by, right, WD Kambaz, followed by this class right here. It's a dot. And we want to give it a margin or padding left of 140 pixels. So padding left of 140 pixels. And this will be very important, meaning if there's someone else saying something else, we want to give this more priority, right? Yeah, so let's target that, and let's see if it works. There it is. See, so it's applying the 140 pixels on the right-hand side, which is this one. This is the right-hand side where the children are, right? Of 140 pixels only if the width of the screen is bigger than 768, and there it is. So it's causing this to move over 140 pixels to compensate for the width of the sidebar. Okay, so yeah, we implemented the hide and show of the Kambaz sidebar. Let's do the same thing for other sidebars, like for instance this here on the left, right, and this one on the right. Right, we see that in Kambaz, in the real Kambaz, we have the same thing happening to not only the Kambaz navigation, but also the course navigation is doing the same thing, right? It's hiding and showing. And in the home page, right, we see that this sidebar is also hiding and showing depending on the screen size, right? When it gets too small, you see that it appears, disappears. So let's do this one first. Right? That seems to be the easier one. So that's implemented in the home page. So home page here, where we have the course status. There it is. See, and we can apply the styles to hide and show, right? Like for instance, we say class name, D none, right? Then the status just goes away. You know. Now we do want it to bring back at a particular screen size. So let's try a medium size. So pretty much at the same time that this one appears, right? So for instance, if we go below, medium, both this sidebar and this status should disappear. Let's see. There it is. So both of them disappear. But I don't believe that's the way Kambaz implements it. Actually, I think they don't bring that sidebar here on the right until it's much bigger. Notice that these are already there up here, but the status one doesn't appear until it's much larger, like right about there, right? Let's try to do the same thing, right? So let's make this bigger. Well, actually, let me see when this disappears, like right about, okay, at that screen size, this should not show, right? So let's start making this bigger and bigger. So medium, large, it's still there. Extra large, it's still there. Okay, it's gone. Let's see if we make it just a slightly bigger, see if it reappears. And there it is, right? So that's the breakpoint where we bring back the status. I think it's a little larger than a little later than what Kambaz does it. Right, Kambaz brings it back just a little bit earlier, but that's fine, right? It's pretty close, both so that they both behave the same way. And the same thing for the course navigation, right? So that's in the course layout over here, and courses CD layout right here, where we have the course navigation appear and disappear, right? So we can do the same thing. When it's really small, this should not show, right? So pretty much what the same thing that we did for the Kambaz navigation, right? So we're going to apply here class name, start off with none, so don't show it. So there it is, it's gone. But we're going to bring it back when it's medium. So both of them should come up at the same time. There we go. See that? All right. Yeah. So with with dnon and then dblock, targeting different screen sizes, we could pretty much decide what to show and what to hide, right? At different screen sizes, again, to control we have very granular control of what the layout is at each screen size. Okay, so now let's style the dashboard, right? So the dashboard we know is the page that describes, that displays all the courses that you are enrolled in, right? Either students that are enrolled in courses that they're taking, or faculty courses that they're taking, or mostly courses that they're teaching, right? And and it's also responsive, right? Here you see the courses are displayed in a grid, and that as the size of the screen resizes, right, it kind of starts off with a grid from left to right, but then when there's no more space, right, kind of like wraps around, right? And as the screen becomes even smaller, right, notice that the sizes of the courses, the cards here, um, don't change, but they wrap around, up until you get to something small enough, and then we just hide the sidebar, right? And then we just show the course kind of becomes kind of like a block element that takes the whole width of the screen, right? Now there is a component, a Bootstrap component called layout cards, right? That allows you to kind of implement something similar to this. That we can copy a lot of the code so that we can achieve the same styling. If you go to card groups, you see that they have several options where they're flush to one another, or they render with the gutters in between, some white spacing in between, and this is a code snippets that I use to achieve the layout that we're going to implement now. So this code, you'll see that it looks very much like this, right? So I just copied and pasted it into my solution that I'll show you in a minute, right? So here's the code repeated here again, where what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this as our base implementation. We're gonna replace what we have, right? So right now, what we have for the dashboard, right? We just have an outer div that contains all the courses, and then each course is then implemented with this div. So we're going to replace this implementation with this implementation, right? We're going to leave the outer div that has the WD courses, WD dashboard courses, right, of here, and then we're just going to replace these, right, with that snippet that I copied from the course, from the React Bootstrap. Okay. All right. So let's start this. Let's copy this right here. Copy it, and then we can talk about it after I copy it. So let's paste that in there, and then we'll paste this in there. Row. Paste that in there like that. Save that. Right now it's going to break because I haven't imported any of my components. We'll import columns. We'll import row, and we'll import card. We'll import body. All these imports. We're going to import all at the same time. So import all missing imports. And what else? I think we might have an extra card in there. Well, I think it's supposed to be href, not rough. Href. There we go. All right. Yes. There we have it. Right. So we have one card, right, using the image for React.js, right? And then a couple placeholders for some dummy courses. I'm going to remove that, and I'm just going to copy and paste this one column, which represents just a single course, right? We can minimize this, and we can just copy this and paste it over and over, one per course. I'm just going to copy a whole bunch of them. There we have it, right? So we have the courses. Obviously, the numbers are wrong. The descriptions could do better, but the layout is as we expected. Notice that it wraps, and we have more space. They just expand from left to right, and then when there's then more space, it just wraps to the next line. It's exactly what we wanted, right? obviously we had different images and we have at least different names for the courses. You could see that these are individual courses; they're not just copy pasted. Okay, but yeah, that is the kind of layout that we were looking for. Right now, we copied and pasted. In the next module, we're going to take a look at how we can represent the courses as data structures, like arrays of objects that we can iterate over, right, and automatically add all these courses. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at now styling the courses nav. Okay? So this is the navigation sidebar that appears when you navigate to a specific course, right? And it gives you additional navigation so you can get to different pages, but that are specific to that one course. Like so, it would display the modules for that course or the assignments for that course, quizzes and whatnot, right? So right now we don't have that. Right now all this content is static, right? So you get this same module, same assignments, same quizzes, right? For all the different courses, right? So we'll deal with that a little later. But right now let's focus on styling the our sidebar so that it looks more what the screenshots convey. Right? And what we're going to do is that we're going to use the same strategy that we used earlier. Right? We're going to style our HTML to classes that we already know how it renders. Right? For instance, we know that list groups and list group items already render with rounded corners, with borders, with a particular color scheme, and it's a good place to start. That from a place that you already know the way it styles, and then you can go in and and override the style so that it's more specific to what we want. And what we want is to render like this, right? As opposed to right now it's pretty far from what we want. It's rendering that like this a list of links. Instead, we want it to render nicely like the real Canvas sidebar, right? That it's the text is red, the background is white, right? And the selected has this bar here on the left. Okay. So yeah, so let's do that. The current implementation that we have is the course navigation. Right, we have this. Right, we have a div, and let's make this so that we can move this so we can take a look at what we're doing. And we're going to make this a little bigger so that we can see how our styles change. Okay. So yeah, so let's apply the classes. Now again, there's two ways of doing it. We can use the component version of the React Bootstrap, which we would convert all these to list group components. But Bootstrap and most CSS library will let you do this in both ways, right? We can either use the components or we can use the classes, right? So let's, we already saw how to do it with components. Let's now try it out with the classes, right? So this div, we're going to style it as a list group. I'm just going to save that, and then each one of these, we're going to style it. Is this rendering? Oh, okay. It's course navigation. And then these here are going to be list group items. There we go. So that's the first list group item. And we're going to apply the same to all of these. Oops. There we go. All right. And to all these too. As we go, there we go. There we go. Excellent. All right. So now we have all those applied to all the elements. We do want to remove these rounded corners and these extra spaces, right? And this is because we had added all these breaks, because we didn't have these links were originally rendering as inline, but list group item forces these links to render as block elements, right? Adding their own vertical spacing. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So we have the standard list group from Bootstrap with the rounded corners, the borders, the color scheme of black over white. Right? So let's start overriding some of these things. So let's remove first the rounded corners. Right? So here, there's we can remove the rounded to 0. That's the how much roundedness do we want? So 0 just turns off all the roundedness. We'll remove all the borders all around, and that we're going to do that to each one of the elements, line items. So we'll do border 0, right? There it is, and we'll apply these to all the line items. There you go, like that, and that. Perfect, and that. Perfect. All right, so now they don't have any borders. I think the last thing that we need is that this text is supposed to be red, right? So let's convert that into text danger. I think it's red. There we go. So let's do that as well. Now here we're doing it manually, one at a time, but next lecture we're going to introduce JavaScript, and instead of doing this manually and copying this all the time, we're going to have like an array, right? An array of links, so we can iterate and just render this, use this as a template, right? And then just use that to copy and paste them inside of a loop, right? But we don't have that just yet. Then this home here is different. Now the list group item from React, Bootstrap, or Bootstrap in general, declares a class called active that is useful within list items that highlights that element as active, the active element, right? So if we apply this, notice that the default styling is to have it white on blue, right? And we can override that, and this gives us an opportunity to discuss this, that oftentimes when you're using a library like Bootstrap or Tailwind or whatever, oftentimes you want to override all the classes that they provide. I mean, obviously we're using these classes in the first place because we like most of the infrastructure and engineering that went into building these libraries, but then we might want to tweak a few things here and there. So let's see how we tweak this, right? So how do we do that? Let's bring this up like that and inspect this so that we can see, right, what is it that Bootstrap is doing to highlight this, right? So notice that it's from this rule, the CSS rule in Bootstrap, right? And so what we're going to do is that we're going to copy this rule and we're going to copy it into our own style sheet so that we can override it, right? We're going to close that and bring it over to, oops, not that small. Wait, there we go. We're going to bring it over to our style sheet. Here it is. We'll paste it down here, and we're going to override it. We're going to say, well, actually, the background color, I don't want it to be blue. I want it to be white, right? White. And whereas the foreground color, I want it to be black. There we go. And the border, right? The border color. Actually, I'm gonna say the border that I want is. Let's see. Actually, don't we have we already have on home, we have this border 0. So this is already turning off the border. So we don't want that. We want to turn it off here first, or none. All right, so no borders, but then override a specific border on the left, right? We're going to override the left to be something specific, maybe something like solid, black, and then 4 pixels or something, right? There it is. See that? So it's highlighted, right? And so this is the styling of active. And what you'll realize is that if you inspect it, you'll see that there's actually 2 rules that are competing against each other. First, it's the one defined by Bootstrap, and notice that it's all scratched out. It says that this is actually the rule is triggering, but this says that this is not actually being applied because there's a rule that looks identical to it that is overriding all these values, right? And so which is defined in styles.css. And so styles.css, it overrides Bootstrap. And the reason that is because our styles is being loaded from our layout, right? From our canvas layout. Yeah, there it is, right? But then canvas layout is itself defined up higher, even higher than canvas layout, we have the root layout, right? That is loading Bootstrap. See that? So because Bootstrap is loaded first, right? Any subsequent style sheet that overrides the rules is going to take precedence. That's why, Canvas layout is its declaration, its loading of the style.css. Any rules here that contradict Bootstrap min is gonna take precedence because it's defined later. Yeah. So yeah, it's very important that you strategically load base libraries that are the foundation that pretty much sets up the infrastructure of the CSS. But then later, in later import, right, you load overriding rules or rules that are more specific that target a specific sub page or sub component within your application. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at how we can style modules. Right. So modules is the page that displays the list of modules. Once you select a particular course, right, it navigates and displays the modules for that particular course, right? And we saw that we've already implemented the fact that there's responsive, right? So here's just illustrating the fact that at the highest width of the screen, right, it's displaying 4 different columns, right? These 3 sidebars and the main content, and that as the screen becomes smaller and smaller, right, we start hiding some of the sidebars. First, the course status here on the right, and then we hide both sidebars on the left, the canvas navigation and the course navigation. I mean, we could go a little further, although it's not required in the assignment, that when we hide the sidebars on the left, we provide this header at the top that still allows us to pretty much do all the navigation, right? If you click on the left, you get this list of the canvas navigation where you can still navigate to the calendar, the inbox, right? The dashboard, account, blah, 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 right? And then if you click here on the right, you get another drop down, right? That has links that allows you to navigate to the quizzes, the assignments, the modules, home and whatnot, right? So yeah, and you could apply the same techniques of hiding and showing, where which would be the opposite of these sidebars, right? That when you hide these, right, you then show this header. But again, it's not required for the assignment. So yeah, there's more details on that. We've already implemented the hiding and showing, right? Right, and here we have examples on implementing the buttons at the top of the module, right? And feel free to copy this code and implement it yourself, and just confirm that indeed it renders as expected. Okay. What I want to focus on is implementing the modules down below, right? The list of the modules, the list of the lessons inside of the modules, and the strategy is going to be pretty much the same, right? We're going to convert all our content to list group and list group item first, and then start overriding the classes, right, until it looks more or less the target screenshot over here. Okay. So I already have that here, the code, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to replace this, right? So all the ULs are going to be converted to a list groups, and the line items are going to be list group items. Okay. So I'm going to replace all this content. I'm just going to, for now, which right now we have this, right? I'm just going to blow that away, right? All the UL. like that. So there's no content there. And I'm just going to copy this. It's pretty much the same thing we did for the Canvas navigation, for the course navigation, right? We convert everything into a list group, and then we start adding Bootstrap classes to accomplish the style that we want, right? So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste that in here. Let's see, paste that in there, and it's here, and then copy the rest here, copy that, and paste it in there. Save that, and we'll need to import all these components. All missing imports. Let's say there it is, right? Yeah, more or less what we wanted. Other than that, then the colors are a little bit too dark, and we can do the same thing that we did earlier, right? We can see the color and the rule that controls the coloring scheme, and it's this class right here, BG secondary. That's the class that we're using to turn this gray, and we can override that, right? And also the sidebars, we can override those sidebars. And so here's an example on how to do that, right? Where we can copy that rule here, BG secondary, and we can override the actual color that we want, right? And so I'm just going to copy it and paste it in styles. Right, so copy that. I'm also going to override the borders, right, and the colors, and so that it matches more what the target screenshot, right? So yeah, so let's put that in the styles, and let's move this here on the right so we can see what we're doing. There, right there. And so let's paste this down here, paste that. So yeah, so I'm overriding the background color to be gray, right? As opposed to that really dark gray. And also I'm turning on the lessons, right? It's a class that I have on the elements, right? I'm going to change the border left to be green, right? So I'm going to save that. So if I save, notice that there it is, right? Now it looks so much more what the target screenshot is. See that? And yeah, obviously, there's a lot of trial and error until you get it completely right. But you get the idea. All right.